I'm back with another edition of How to Drink Bar Basics, the show where I talk about basic tips and tricks, techniques, tools, things you need to make better cocktails at home. This series is proudly presented by Arnold. Arnold makes fantastic mid-century modern inspired furniture at a price you can afford. They ship it direct to you. It's really well-made stuff. I love it. It is beautiful. I think that if you've been following the show, you have seen it, and it looks great in my home. It is a serious upgrade over what I had in there before. If you're interested, you can follow the link in the show description and pick up your own. They ship almost everything everywhere in the world for about 50 bucks, and they ship fast. This episode of Bar Basics, we are talking about the books that I keep in my bar. This is a requested episode I've had. A lot of you guys want to know what books I use for research purposes and inspiration. This is that episode. This week we're talking about the books that I own. I have my entire cocktail library here, I think. Without further ado, I'm going to start with the most important book. Imbibe. It's by David Wondrich. It's basically his annotated version of Jerry Thomas's Bartender's Guide with some updates. David Wondrich is doing like intense primary historical research. He's reading through old newspapers and magazines for notes. So if Thomas updated his recipe, that kind of information will be in here. He's moved all of the measurements into measurements that you will find familiar, because wine glasses and ponies are not things we use anymore. If I only had one book in my library for cocktails, this would be the one to own. A fair number of my recipes kind of come straight out of this book, if I'm not lying. My second favorite book in this library is Liquid Intelligence by Dave Arnold. Totally the other end of the spectrum. Dave Arnold is kind of a star tender, all around very nice guy, and genius. He really kind of blew the lid off of science bartending techniques. Everything I know about working with liquid nitrogen comes from this book, for example. My inspiration to be using a hot poker in the Iron Price episode comes from this book. And I mean, it's a book that I will go back to again and again and again, because it's a textbook. There's more in here than I can absorb on a single read through, and it's a cookbook anyway, so you don't really read it straight through anyway. You kind of use it as a reference, right? Like any of these. And the next book that I consider like sort of my holy trinity is the Smuggler's Cove book. This is basically the only book I have on tiki. Martin Kate and Rebecca Kate really run a tight ship at Smuggler's Cove, which is, if you're not familiar, it's a bar in San Francisco. Fantastic bar. I was there on my honeymoon, and I was obsessed with, immediately smitten with the place, and when I heard he was coming out with a book, I had to buy a copy. This book is fantastic. It has a lot about tiki in general. This book will be a guide to executing tiki decor, to the tiki ethos, tiki garnishes, the history of tiki, the greats of the tiki thing. It has, of course, many recipes, all of your tiki staples, and then updated versions in a lot of cases, where the way that they serve them at the Smuggler's Cove, which is not a bad place to go. So this is a wonderful book, but the best thing about it, this section of the book is a rum textbook. It is everything, as far as I can tell, that you need to know about rum. This book has it covered. I would say it's indispensable for that chapter alone. The cocktails are almost bonus material. He really has a great system that breaks down rum into 7 or 8 or 9 types, and then references those codes throughout the cocktails. Huge guiding light to me in slinging some tiki drinks. I don't know that he invented that or not, but it's in this book, whether he invented it or not. All I know is that it's awesome, and if you want it, it's here. The next book I want to talk about is the Savoy Cocktail book. A lot of printings of this. This particular one is a cheap one, and it's basically just photocopies of the original. The Savoy Cocktail book is one of the great Bibles, I suppose. Harry Craddock's Savoy Cocktail book will come up again and again in articles as the reference for Prohibition and post-Prohibition cocktails. This is an unusual one. Early American Beverages by John Hull Brown. I bought a copy of this for like a penny plus shipping on Amazon. It is out of print, so you're gonna have to find a used copy if you want one. It is a textbook of exactly what it says, Early American Beverages, and I only found out that it exists because Dave Arnold mentions it in Liquid Intelligence, and so I had to get a copy. This is where he did his research on, his initial research on using hot pokers in drinks. But it's a good book if you're interested in really old stuff. I mean, like 1600s drinks. Almost none of it is cocktails, I think. I think nothing in here qualifies as a cocktail. It's mostly going to be a cider, that's what it says, liqueurs and cordials, cider and perry, ale and beer. Perry, if you were unaware, is cider but made from pears. Tasty stuff, and it's good. Sasha Petrosky regarding cocktails. Excellent cocktail book. Came out posthumously. Sadly, Satra was taken from us too soon. One of the most important figures of the speakeasy renaissance. Sasha's bars are destinations and always have been, and hopefully will continue to be. Milk and Honey, sadly, probably the most famous of them all, is gone. This is a book of the cocktails that were of the Milk and Honey pantheon, the drinks that they served there. So Gordon's Cup comes from this. It also has a lot of essays and stories from the bar and about Sasha. Yes, it has classics in there, but it's a great book if you're really interested in what we would call new classics, the cocktails that were invented at Milk and Honey and Little Branch and so on. Jerry Thomas's book included a section on punch. Dave Wondrich decided not to include it in his book Imbibe because punch is really a separate drink and has very different characteristics, and if you're interested in one, you may not be interested in the other. I don't actually reference this book very often. As a completionist, I like having it, and when if you're making milk punch, this is a great book to have. If you're interested in punch, this is a great book to have. Won't have any of the cocktail staples you're looking for, but it's a very interesting book nonetheless. The history of punch and distilled spirits as a whole is kind of in here. This is a weird one. Bottoms Up, which I have two books called Bottoms Up. This is a reprint of the 1928 Prohibition cocktail book. It's, I think, the only book of cocktail recipes that was actually printed during Prohibition. It's 52 drinks that were submitted by famous and notable people of the day of 1928. Very few of these names will be familiar to you, I am certain. They're mostly vaudevillians. It's a crazy, I would love to get an original copy of it because it's shaped like this cocktail shaker. It has this really cool thing. And again, it's one of those reprints where they just made photocopies of the original shape of it and everything so you can see both sides. I haven't really explored it very much, but as a curiosity, it's pretty cool. Maybe you want to know it exists. Do I think you need it in your bar? Absolutely not. It's just kind of a neat book. There is a 50s version called Ted Saucier's Bottoms Up, which I don't think has any relation to the 28 version. It does have some very interesting pinup work in here, fascinating stuff. Perhaps a full color copy would be in order. A lot of recipes in here. The same concept, in a lot of cases presented and prepared by notable figures of the day, some of which you will recognize, many of which you will not. Do you need it? No. It's just an interesting curiosity, a novelty. Embarrassingly, I just got this copy of Meehan's bartending manual, and I haven't had one yet, and I haven't had a chance to spend any time with it. I know a lot of people swear by it, and it's a much-loved book. I cannot endorse or not endorse it because I haven't had a chance to read it. The ones that I think you really need on your shelf are Imbibe, Smuggler's Cove, and Liquid Intelligence. I know there are other tiki books out there, like Beach Bum Berry's book. I just don't have a copy of it. Maybe it's better. I don't know. I need to pick up a copy. The one book I forgot to put in the shelf that I just went and got, Fix the Pumps by Darcy O'Neill. This has no cocktails in it. This is all about non-alcoholic and soda fountain drinks. Concoctions that you would have got at the pharmacy or at the soda fountain up until somewhat recently. And how to make a lot of stuff from scratch. Syrups and elixirs and tonics and phosphates and egg creams and how to make ginger ale and all of those things are in here. Not all of cocktail making is about alcohol in a lot of ways, and maybe you've got some people who can't drink and they're interested in your cocktail parties. This would be a great book. Actually, non-alcoholic drinks is something I get a lot of requests for, and I'm definitely going to do it. And when I do it, it won't just be virgin pina coladas and things like that. We're going to actually dive into the world of the soda jerk. That's the books I got and use in my library, and it's always growing. Maybe we will update this later, but this was this episode of Bar Basics, the books I have, the books I recommend, thoughts on books. I don't know what else to say about it. If you like the show, I hope you will subscribe, and I blog at thishishowtodrink.com. If you I tweet at howtodrink with the number 2. I am on Instagram at howtodrink with the number 2. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/howtodrink. If you like the show, check those things out for me. It'd be great. If you want any of these books, the links will be in the show description and also at the gear page at thishishowtodrink.com/gear. It's great for me if you shop through those links, and it doesn't cost you anything more. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope this was useful to you, and I will see you on Friday with another cocktail. Bye.
I went down to St. James Infirmary to see my baby there. She stretched out on a long white table, so cold, so pale, so fair. No formal singing training. None whatsoever.